notes on it in the beginning.
Yeah.
One thing that came out of that video for a lot of people was, wait, how do I know that I'm writing anything important? How do I establish the instability, the inconsistency? How do I argue for the importance of what I'm doing? So first of all, as that video made clear, you have to really think about your audience. And in your case, each one of you should imagine 2 audiences. Okay, maybe 3. One audience is the people you are citing. Imagine that any one of them could read your work. The second audience is people who don't know a lot about the topic but are interested but are researchers or understand methods, at least to an extent. They may not know the ins and outs of your particular method, but they get method. And the third audience is me. You can actually lump me in with that second category of people. So you have really 2 audiences, people who you're citing, and me plus people like me, who are not necessarily experts in your topics, but have been around the block a few times. So how do you address those audiences? Well, the video said something interesting. Does anybody remember how they said you should address, like, basically the people that you're citing? They said, basically to write something like this. You have made such, in like more serious language, you have made such a fantastic contribution to the field. Your work has established so much. Here's why it's wrong. And work can be wrong in one of 2 ways. It can be incomplete. It can also be fully inaccurate. Like there's just something fundamentally wrong about it. How many of you in this room are going to argue that the past literature is fully inaccurate in some way? A little bit. So tell me a little bit about that.
It's not so much that it's like inaccurate as much as it just like doesn't address exactly what I'm trying to address. So
it might be more on the incomplete line of thinking.
Yeah.
So your argument becomes, well, we know so much about this topic. We know all about this, we know all about this, we have these great theories to bring to bear, but no one has looked at it in this way. And this way is really interesting because, and that's what you need to be able to address. Why do we care? So why do we care?
We care because there are very real consequences for this body of people who are experiencing this.
Profound practical consequences. That's one reason to care about this gap in the literature. Anybody else have a different reason to care? Why do we care about left leading videos on YouTube?
Because of public discourse and accuracy of information that we're getting.
Yes, public discourse. Educate all these video essays on YouTube, and we wonder, like, how are they actually capturing something accurate? Are they actually bringing in like rigorous, accurate information, or could they be instead like hotspots for misinformation and disinformation? Like, we have this fundamental question about what it means to have this democratization of education. Again, it speaks to societal importance, right? These are long thought about concepts, but applied to this new online context where anybody can look at videos and become persuaded, whether it's a white nationalist rabbit hole or a leftist community. The political and moral judgment is less what we're concerned here than with the accuracy and completeness of the information that's being presented, and how that's established, and how intellectual inquiry and curiosity are being encouraged or discouraged. Anybody else? What's interesting about eating disorders and family dynamics?
Like the repercussions where if the disordered eating behaviors start at a young age, if they can remain stagnant or like get worse throughout someone's life, and also if like the dynamic between you and your parental figure, whether it be paternal or maternal, can play a role in that.
And it's underexplored, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot on societal impacts on eating disorders or peer impacts, but less on
Like
family
switch, yeah.
impacts. And it's such a key part of that. So for you, it's not just about the practical implications, it's like has fundamental theoretical implications. If you're not taking that component of the trifecta of influences on eating disorders into account, you're not going to be able to address the problem. So you all have powerful projects going on.
Yeah.
So what have I mentioned in terms of the structure of an introduction? What kind of statement should you start with? It starts with an R.
Relevance.
Relevant statement.
Yeah.
Relevant, and what is that? What is a relevant statement?
Why does this matter?
Why does this matter to whom? To who?
Reader.
General society. It's to the reader, general society. It's appealing. Normally your work in academia will be closed behind a paywall, and unless they're accessing it through a public library or a student accessing it through a university library, no one's gonna see it. But the relevant statement is going to get you media coverage, but also it appeals to both of those audiences. It appeals to the people you're citing, they're like, yeah, our work is relevant, suck it. To be absurd about it. But they're all, suck it, mom and dad, you told me I was wasting my time. No, that's not necessarily the family dynamic that's going on. But, it's certainly not my case. But the other audience, that secondary audience, the people who are like interested in your work, don't know a lot about it, but they're scholars still, they can assess it. They are brought in by that relevant statement. So then what's the second statement that you're setting up in your intro? Starts with the C. Contribution statement. So how do you set up a contribution statement?
Address the gaps and then say what you're bringing to the table.
Yes, so the contribution statement is for both audiences, but specifically targeting those people that you're citing. They're the ones that need to be like, oh, you're familiar with our work, you can make a few general and accurate claims about it. You're acknowledging its strengths and their limitations. You're giving them their credit. But you're also saying, hey, this is incomplete. And you're letting them know this is incomplete. You're hinting at why that's important, potentially tying back to your relevance statement for those of you who are addressing social implications. And then you are saying, okay, this is the gap. And then you are gonna give your reader what? After the contribution statement comes what? Hint, it doesn't have the word statement associated with it, yeah. Anybody? Right?
A preview of the theory/literature that will be discussed in preparation for deriving research questions or hypotheses that should match the contribution statement. Often a discussion of methods as well.
Perfect, so what does that mean in your context? Let's say you have to preview your work, might be putting you too much on the spot. Anybody have a sense of how they write an advanced organizer for their intro?
I feel like defining my theories that I'm using, and then specifically I'm using SDT, self-determination theory, and then I'm using a new thing that you told me about that I'm using. So I feel like introducing, defining those, and maybe giving an example of how it could relate to mine, but only a little shoulder, not the whole thing, because that's all I'm gonna do in my next section.
Yeah, so you're essentially
Just a little
saying
ooh.
the next sections
coming?
of your paper, the subsections of that front section, is everything before the context. So you might say, okay, so first I'm going to discuss self-determination theory and lay out a framework through which to understand your topic.
Yeah.
And then the next section will address that new thing.
Yeah.
Final hypotheses will be derived and tested using blah blah blah. Or in your case, themes will be explored using semi-structured qualitative interviews with Orange Theory-based instructors. The end. It's a simple guideline for your readers so that they never feel confused when they're looking through your introduction why you're saying what you're saying. It's there to just make sure that you're constantly reminding them that there is structure and order to your arguments and evidence in spite of the complexity of your task. Anybody feel like that's gonna be a little bit of a struggle?
I'm not good at like, I feel like giving a little sneak peek as to what I'm gonna write about. Like I feel like I just wanna like, like
There can be a
spit it out.
temptation to over explain.
And then maybe we'll have to like move some sentences from up top to down. But it's good to like get out all the ideas. Question
Yeah.
mark slash is what my goal is.
Yeah, getting out your ideas. There are so many times that I write an email and then I take that last concluding sentence of the email, I just move it to the top. You know, so I'm not burying the lead. Yeah, like you're finally like, oh, this is what I'm really trying to say, and then you move it.
I feel like our biggest, at least what I'm thinking, is like just trying to get down all my ideas and then like moving it to like the proper sections, but less focus on like this goes here and there, and then like just writing, see what comes good.
And it never hurts to to have like frequent transition statements. If anything could feel like, you want your reader to feel like a passenger in your car and to know every turn that's coming up and for it to be a gentle turn. Have you ever been a passenger in a car where the turns weren't so gentle?
I was a
Yeah.
driver.
You never want to do that to your reader. You never want them to feel like they don't know where they're going and they don't know what just happened. Like, you don't want that to be your reader's experience. So it takes a lot of work. It's very rare, but sometimes people can be really like overdo it. But that, I'll let you know if you're overdoing it, but that's rare.
Like
Usually
writing too
people,
much, you mean, or what do you mean by over?
yeah, like constantly previewing in the next paragraph, I'll describe this. Like you don't wanna be quite that obvious, but you'll be like in the next section where this links to this, you do wanna be explicit about the structure. I'll let you know if you cross a line where it's like,
Stop
this
previewing.
is really obvious, like you're
Okay.
basically writing everything. It's a rare line for students to cross, you probably don't have to worry about. More often I'll be like, your reader doesn't know why you just did that. Your reader does not know why you jumped there. Your reader has whiplash, like you don't want that for your reader. And I don't know if you remember when we went over work of mine that got recently published, how in order to get past the reviewers, I had to add, this is important because statements like 20 times. Because guess what? It was a company that had a lot of theories you're working with, and we had a lot of like semi-importance, at least important to us, things that we needed to say. So we kept having to highlight that. Because this is important statements. Those are part of the contribution statement. There's like, you could think of them as sub-contribution statements, but what do they do? Which audience do they appeal to? That more general scholarly audience.